Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to the official ladies class on the Tefillah, which we were discussing now, the Ramban, the Igeres Ramban, the letter of the Ramban. And to pick up where we left off last week, just in the second line, mentioned it says, Tisnai tamid l'daber kol d'varecha b'nachas l'chol adam l'b'chales. One should accustom themselves to continuously, always speak all of their words, b'nachas, with sense of serenity, and l'chol adam, to every person, l'b'chales. So I want to pick up where we left off last week, just on the words when it says l'chol adam. L'chol adam, to all people. There was once there is a great woman, I should say, and she once gave me the most direct rebuke and musar that I've ever received in my life. And the person told me, that was a woman, said to me that I only want you to treat me no less than a stranger in the street. Now, what does that mean? Don't treat me any less than a stranger in the street. So typically, very often when you meet a stranger, you're very courteous. You have time. You listen to the person. Someone asks you, even though I'm from New York, New York has a notorious bad rap for being a city with, that's, how should we say, rude, okay? But those of you watching in New York, that is no longer true. Right? We cleaned up not only the subways, but we cleaned up the act as well. And it's not true anymore that New Yorkers are typically today more courteous, more helpful in the streets. And typically a person would ask you for directions, ask you for the time. You would speak to them nicely. You wouldn't say to them, person asks you the time, go get a watch. Like, what am I, a clock? You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the typical answers, like, what do I look like, But you would answer that person that. So when it talks about all people, there's a group of people who unfortunately are the recipients of our angst at times or our bad moods. We don't do it to a stranger, but sometimes we do it to our families. And all people not only includes, but specifically should include the individuals who we usually take for granted. Being a person's parents, a spouse, children, and we have less patience typically for those individuals because we take for granted the love, the respect, the relationship, the list of the words I said. We take it for granted. And the rule of life is, don't take anything for granted. Okay? And therefore, when it talks about l'chol adam, speak benachas, speak softly to every person. U'b'chol eis. What does b'chol eis mean? B'chol eis means at all times. The word atah in Hebrew, atah with an aleph, is you. But atah with an ayin is ace. We know in Koheles, for example, I think it's in the 3rd chapter, it lists at the beginning of all the different times, time to love, time to hate, time to battle, time to make peace, and a whole list of ace. What does it mean at all times? So at all times means never lose your temper. The Rambam tells us, the Rambam, Maimonides tells us that in all midos, in all character measures, there is a time for both. Time to be on one extreme or another extreme. Okay? Sometimes a person has to be, a person has to be, show compassion. And sometimes we don't show the compassion necessarily. Okay? There has to be, it's measured. But there's one character trait, there's one midah that there's zero tolerance for. What's the midah? Ka'as. Anger. There's no room for anger whatsoever. Never lose your temper. Now, I'm so glad we're able to sit here and listen to this. Oh, of course, we're so laid back, and who would ever lose their temper? Well, sometimes a person is exhausted, long day at work. Sometimes they've been drained from the activities of the day. Sometimes they were disappointed at something that happened during their day, in their lifetime. They get aggravated at something that was beyond their control. Something happens, the person gets shocked. They're confused about something. Anything that can throw a person off. Even when that is happening, and even if all those things I mentioned happen at the same time, can you imagine what a day a person had? And then when everything is crashing down on your head, and then someone does something to you and really moves you, and you want to, get angry because they said something to you, and it was a foolish statement, it was something you didn't want to do, that is a time to keep calm. Keep calm, react in a slow manner, and speak gently. That's the pshat in the idea of choles. So that takes us to the comma. There are handouts of the Igeres HaRamban there. We're on the second line, right in the middle of the line. And I want to just finish off a few more insights into just the general about kaas, about anger. Getting back to what that woman told me, I skipped a little. I said that sometimes to a stranger, we have a lot of time, but a family member, not. So the person said to me, he says, don't treat me any less than a stranger in the street. And a stranger in the street, we have plenty of time for. We give them the time of day. We're courteous. We speak softly. That person in our family should be the one that we should, for sure, treat better than anyone else. Unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't happen. That was the greatest words that I've ever received of Musar by a great woman. Now, the Gemara tells us that kaas, anger, which is the opposite. When it talks about speaking softly, because you're not losing your control, but kaas is not only identified, but it's similar to avodah zarah, to the worshiping of idolatry. What does one thing have to do with the other? What is having my lose my sense of and I'm angry that all of a sudden I'm considered like I'm serving an idol. I'm an oved avodah zarah, the Gemara says. How's that possible? Well, basically, when we lose the sense of who we are and the purpose of life, we are moving away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from God. And anything that takes us away from the service of God automatically is zar. It moves us away, it turns us, and that's something that's foreign, and that's something that we have to be careful of. So, the Zohar tells us, quite to the opposite extreme, and that is, that someone who carefully guards his speech, I'm not talking about Lashon Hara, that we always say, guard your speech. Here we're talking about speaking softly, speaking appropriately, speaking nicely. To those individuals who guard themselves against giving in to anger, easier said than done. When I was 16 years old, we had a worker in the house. I may have mentioned this before. In the house, we had a worker. I don't remember exactly what the type of work was. I was 16 years old. And I decided to ask him a few questions about the work or how I was going to do it. And he spoke back, he talked to me. Apologize for that interruption. So this worker was spoke down to me, and I felt, I was really annoyed. I got angry at him, so angry. My mother, she called a therapist or a psychiatrist. I promise. She was so nervous. She wanted me to see somebody because she never saw me react in such a crazy way. I was going to attack the person. I don't remember exactly why, but that's the case. So someone who does not give in to anger. What I'm trying to bring out is that people give in to anger, unfortunately. But if you don't, the same way that when one gets angry and it's as if it's avodah zarah, idolatry, one who controls their anger and avoids arguments, that person's home is compared to the Beis HaMikdash. It's compared to the highest service of the temple that's possible. Rabbi Avi Shulman, who I personally know is one of the great Jewish educators of our time. I personally took a teacher's training course with him in public speaking and so on. So he has a book called an idea called Lifeline. It's very interesting. But he has some credos that he once lived. I'll share with you. He says that a person has to say, I am nice, but firm. I'm pleasant, but resolute. I'm delightful, but I'm determined. Cordial, but tenacious. Respectful, but unyielding. Gracious, but immutable. There are times that you can't control someone else's situations or other people. But I always can control my attitude vis-a-vis what's happening with them. If someone is angry at me, typically what does a person react? They become angry back. Don't. I don't have to react to what they're doing. That's what the Ramban is telling us. L'chol adam, to any person, how they're reacting, u'b'choles, in any situation that we found themselves. Finally, there's the last level of perhaps what we would say, the meaning of the message that the Ramban is giving over to his son through this letter, is mentioned in what Shlomo HaMelech mentions in Koheles, in Perek Tes, verse Pasuk Yud Zayin 9:17. He says, Divrei Chachamim, the words of the sages, of the wise, Benachas Nishmayim, spoken gently, are heard. I can't begin to tell you how many people I have generally speaking, when I lecture, as you can tell even here, we're not in such a big room, and sometimes I speak too loud. I know that. It's hard for me to control that. And sometimes in shul, giving a drasha, people say, "Why are you yelling for?" I'm not intentionally yelling. They say, "We hear you, fine, Rabbi. You don't have to raise your voice." And I once gave a drasha and used the E.F. Hutton, right, commercial. Those who remember E.F. Hutton, which is a brokerage firm. And the commercial, for those who remember, was people would whisper, and all of a sudden, like in a big room, there was like gathering in a big room, and one person whispers, and to another person, all of a sudden, all the background noise, shh, get all quiet. And on the bottom it says, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Quiet. And the same applies to the words of the Torah. And I try myself. It's hard for me sometimes. But in the drasha, in a speech, sometimes it's very effective. And I'm just mentioning about the skill set, when you're giving a lecture. Not that I'm not angry, God forbid. But the idea being, when you speak benachas, you don't have to yell necessarily. In fact, to the contrary. Sometimes when you speak softly, it makes a person listen better and want to hear. And often it really, really works. You really see this really come true with children, little children. When you sit down with them, and you don't raise your voice to them, but you speak softly to them as well. And then you diffuse that situation. But a wise person remains in control, okay, under all circumstances, that the other person then all of a sudden gets quiet as well. It diffuses this chaos. So not only when you are the ability to speak to every person and all people, as we mentioned, b'choles, at all times, not with chaos, not only are you able to help yourself by not being angry, but the way we speak, we can actually not, I want to say control, but we can try to educate or convince or show the other person that you don't have to be angry, you don't have to raise your voice either in order to get what you want, in order to discuss a subject that we have to talk about. There's no reason to raise our voices. That could be on that level. Okay. Chazon Ish, final point, Chazon Ish, the great Reb Krelitz, who was the founder of Bnei Brak, basically, the builder of Bnei Brak, says he said that all of his influence was due to the fact that he was careful with his tone of voice when he was always advising others. It's amazing how just you speak softly, how that can transcend to a person really thinks about it. And if you do notice something that's very, very common amongst Gedolim, those of the experience of being, had the not only the pleasure, but the honor to be in the presence of one of the great Gedolim, one of the great Torah leaders, the sages of our times, irrespective of the time, doesn't make a difference, but the one common thread amongst all of them was they all spoke softly. They all spoke softly. They raised their voices. Okay, let's continue. Ubazeh, now we're on that second line. Ubazeh, and with this, Tinotzel min hakas, right? A person, that gentle speech will protect you, min hakas, from the anger. And once again, Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, he says, just what I just explained. I'm not saying anything on my own here, by the way. Ma'anerach, a soft answer, Yoshiv Chema, turns away wrath. Udvar Etzer, but a distressing word, Yale Af, stirs up anger. It's the opposite. When you come and try to de-escalate a situation, you can be successful by being calm. But if you just start yelling back at the person, it's not going to make the other person be quiet. You're just going to make them yell louder. And it's going to escalate the situation and not de-escalate it. Now, it's interesting how the word that the Shlomo Melech uses to describe wrath is chema. Chema, ches mem hey, is the root of the word is cham, hot. Chama, you put the vowels in a different place. Chama is the sun, for example. Okay, so the Malbim explains that chema means it's an inner fury. It's not something necessarily on the outside. It's a superficial rage, which can sometimes be even more dangerous than an outward rage. In outward rage, sometimes a person just gets it out of their system. They yell at it, okay, I'm fine. I yell my head off, okay, got it out of my system, I'm fine. But sometimes the internal rage is something that lingers on, and it doesn't come out sometimes. And at that, if we keep it inside of us, anything then can just reignite it. It's like a bomb going off inside of us every single time. And every time that happens, we get excited, we get angry. And that's not good. The Chofetz Chaim, in the Sefer Avas Chesed, love of kindness and charity and things. So we try, or anything that person asks us for, and we don't have, for whatever reason, we have to deny, we have to say no. So there are ways to say it. There is nachas. You could speak nicely in order not to get the other person angry. First of all, don't speak yourself angry. What do you want from me? I don't have. They come. And one could also say, with the tone and the words, to be able to soothe the other individual to make sure that they don't take it the wrong way. Okay? There are ways to save ourselves from kas. And again, remember, anger is a terrible, terrible thing. So we have to do things to try to control the anger that definitely comes to it rises once in a while. Now, we cannot conquer anger without chachma, without wisdom. Everything needs a plan. So we can't just say to ourselves, okay, New Year's resolution, I'm not going to be angry. That's almost saying like a New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose weight, right? I'm going to go on a diet, right? You have to have a plan of action, what's going to take place in order to create that diet. And the same plan of action is required in order to make sure that when that candy bar comes, in relationship to the anger that may rise, maybe I'm going to get angry because I can't have the candy bar, okay? But the point is that you have to be ready to have a plan to make sure that when you need practical techniques to work on ourselves to make sure the anger is controlled. So some suggest you have to promise yourself. This is like, one of those things. You have to say you have to penalize yourself. I mean, you have to treat yourself like a child. What do I mean by that? Child has bad behavior. So what do we try to do to either encourage better behavior or to discourage poor behavior to a child? What do we do?
Positive or negative reinforcement.
Exactly. Positive or negative reinforcement. Oh, you did something great. Here's a star on the refrigerator, right? You get an extra something, right? And if they do something negative, or let's say they do something and it's negative, you yell at them. So that doesn't help. So we need also for ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with it, of having positive reinforcement and negative ramifications. If a person, you say to yourself, if I came to a situation that I controlled my anger, I recognized I was in a situation, and I controlled my anger, I am entitled to a treat. Now, it sounds childish. Yeah. And you know something? We're a bunch of big children. That's why it works. So all we have to say is figure something, whether that's something else. Whether you're entitled, obviously it has to be something that helps you, doesn't affect anyone else's. You can't say, well, I'm going to take a 3-day vacation now and let my kids fend for themselves. That's not going to work per se, but so within reason. Also, don't be so complimentary. Don't think, I control myself. Wow, I'm entitled to like the world. Okay, take it easy here. Okay, you'll have other opportunities to control your anger again. It's not a once in a lifetime opportunity. You know what I'm saying? You can have it a number of times. But what happens if you lose your anger? You lose your control. Well, you have to be punished. Now, obviously, we're not going to hurt ourselves in a certain way. But perhaps we say that if I do something, maybe I'm going to say, you know what? I have to pay. I pay a knas, a penalty. I'm going to take $10 and I'm going to give it to charity. Not the end of the world, not such a terrible thing. But it's not something you would have done otherwise. And of course, it's not about the $10. It's not about the charity that I'll get. Okay, what's the big deal? It's the recognition. You will recognize every single time, you know what, I messed up. We don't recognize it, we don't correct the situation. We'll never correct our anger because there's no way to remind ourselves that we did something wrong. Ka'as also is just one of those things that counting to 10, I know it's being recorded, but there was one Honeymooners a long time ago. I'm not that old. I saw the reruns, okay, so I didn't see the originals. But basically, there was a time that Ralph Cramden he would get angry, So his famous thing was he would count, right? Count to 10, and then he would count and he said, one, bang, zoom, to the moon, whatever it was. But that concept, by the way, there was a lot of chachma in there to understand count. Count releases the pressure. And therefore, by the time I get to 10, I won't be so angry later on. But it's a lifetime struggle. It's like any midah, any character. We know what Chazal, the rabbis tell us about changing one's one character trait. What is, fill in the blank? It's easier to learn the Talmud 60 times than to change one character trait. To change ourselves. Not easy. How many times did I learned through the Talmud? A couple of times, And that's what's skipping a lot of the pages, But where is it, 60 times to change a midah? Yeah, that's what it takes. So, to attain self-control requires a lot of discipline. And by the way, we would all be, we'd be foolish to think that oh, look at all those great tzaddikim, all the great rabbis. Oh, they had self-control. They were born with it. Not so. Rabbi Warren, Yibal L'chaim, the Rebbe tells us about the Chavetz Chaim, someone who witnessed the Chavetz Chaim, who was angry. He didn't get angry at the person, he didn't get in the situation, he got angry at himself. And he went ahead, and he went to the wall, and he went like this, he banged his head on the wall 10 times for getting angry. Because he knew he got angry. So he lost his self-control. He wasn't perfect. But you have to daven for it also. You daven for parnasa, we daven for sustenance, we daven for health, we daven for refuah, we daven for many things we daven for. Do we ever think about davening? This is a prayer class, right? So we should mention prayer. We ever think about davening that Hashem should give us the strength to overcome our chaos, our anger? That'd be a wonderful thing to ask for. That I shouldn't become angry. Be very powerful. There was a story, I forgot who offhand. Can you imagine a Rebbe? With the Gemara, the Rebbe would taught the person, the student, something, same passage, same thing over 400 times. Not 400 times. Could you imagine you as a teacher, you taught something to a student, and they came back and they said, I don't understand. Can you please repeat that? I wasn't listening. I wasn't paying attention. Whatever the case may be. And typically they were listening. Because if you're not listening, that's something different. But they tried. Do you think we'd have the patience? I think I would lose my patience after the second time. Say, why do you blah, 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 can't da, 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 And this person, obviously, this Rebbe, taught over the same passage 400 times. And the 400th time was the same as the 200th time, the same as the first time. And eventually the kid got it. Whatever he needed. Now we could talk about, yes, that's superhuman. How many of us are superheroes? We are not superheroes. But we strive, we look at their actions to say, we should try to be like them. Okay. I say, fine, I'll get the 399 times. The 400th time, I'll lose it. But anyway, we should look at it that way. Okay? Just continue along. We say that when it comes to Ka'as, Shehi Midah Ra'a Lahachti B'nai Adam. Anger is a midah, is a character flaw. Midah Ra'ah, it's a bad character. Right? It's the most serious causes one to sin. Anger causes people to do sins. Not just be angry, but it causes and it leads me to do other sins. Not every midah, character that is in a person causes them to sin necessarily. But this one leads a person to sin. That's how serious it is. So it's not only an individual trait like all the other midos, all the other traits. By the way, when I talk about midos, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, is known by the Shlosh Esrei midos, by the 13 attributes. We say attributes, but it's also the character traits that we mentioned. And what is that? During the Slichos portion of on your Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Hashem, Kel Rachum, V'chanun, Erech HaPayim, Rav Chesed V'emes, right? Erech HaPayim, right? He's slow to anger. Slow to anger. Not quick. We are, zippity do that. We are, right? Jump. No. Slow to anger. That's the character. When it says that we are supposed to be B'Tselem Elokim, we're supposed to be in God's image. We all know that doesn't mean literally that we should be, because God doesn't have form, obviously. How he in his image, in his character traits. There is midos. So the midah is the same way that God is erech hapayim, slow to anger. That's what we have to be. We be slow to anger. If we are slow to anger, you're acting in God's image. We're fulfilling, which the Rabbeinu Bechaya in Sefer Bereshis, in Parshas Bereshis, really outlines that is the purpose of man. The purpose of man is to be B'Tselem Elokim. Not that we are just made in the image of God. What does that mean, we're made in the image of God? To do what? when we're made in the image of God is because when we do fulfill that idea, we are fulfilling the purpose of mankind, of our being, of our existence. That's what God wants for us. To be in His image, to act like God. So, by being angry, that's in the antithesis of God. Now, you may want to argue and say, we're talking about God gets angry at the Jews. It says, no, Charon af, his nostrils flared, right? Which is a description of being angry. It doesn't say God didn't get angry. He's slow to anger. And boy, when the Jewish people test God, He's got a lot of patience. But eventually everyone loses their patience, Because God has to get angry in a sense. Right? God's not anger to God is not what we know anger is the same thing. But eventually that's what happens. But for us, it's the worst thing when a person gets angry. When a person, we all know different types of people. Some people are always losing their temper. Some people rarely lose their temper. So if they rarely lose their temper and they lose it, then you get nervous, right? Because then you know that something's really serious. A person who always loses his temper, always yelling and screaming, all right, another time, right? We don't take it seriously sometimes. But nevertheless, a person who consistently loses his temper on every little issue, big or small, they start to lose their sense of rationality. When you're angry about everything, nothing makes sense anymore. If I lose my temper, for argument's sake, on one issue, which that means I'm rational about everything else. But if I lose my sense of my anger on every issue, I'm not rational on anything, pretty much. I see everything only through my eyes. Not rational. I'm not thinking clearly, generally speaking. And when a person is in that sense, when you lose yourself and you become unrestricted, then it's unrestricted to the Torah, to the mitzvos, to God, and then it's idolatry. That's really the sense of how things take. Okay? The Gemara Brachos, Tav Chav Tes Amud Aleph, quotes Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, says if a person never comes to anger, you will never come to sin. Never come to sin. Because everything then is the opposite. If I'm not angry, then everything is rational. If everything is rational, I come to do that which I'm commanded. It makes sense. Okay. V'chein amru. Rabbi Hussein Zichrono L'Bracha. Continue on the pages. Also, the rabbis of blessed memory also said, Kol HaKoes. Whoever gets angry, whoever has an act of anger, flares up, is in the throes of it. Kol mine gehenim sholten bo. All kinds of gehenim. That's French for hell. Okay? Gehenim. It's obviously gehinom. Okay? Sholten bo rules over the person. Doesn't really rule. When I say rule over the person, it means that the discipline of Gehenim is now upon this person. Anger is not dangerous only in and of itself, but really what it causes, what it can lead to. It can lead to hurting somebody, either emotionally, physically, and we know that, unfortunately, in our day and age, I shouldn't say in our day and age, in our day and age, we're more aware of it, and we come to address the issue of abuse. And yesterday, I spoke to Jewish Family Services. They had a little get together once a month. A rabbi was there, and so one of the issues that came up was about abuse. And again, we today, abuse always has existed. It's not a new phenomenon. all of the things that happen, all the bad things that happen in the world today are not new. Just that now we're more sensitive to it, and we're addressing them, rightfully so, and but it's not new. But we know that today, unfortunately, now that we're more aware of it, that's what anger, rage causes. And I don't have to start to give you all the examples, because I'm sure we're well aware of that it can come to, God forbid, losing control and anger and hitting a child, a spouse, even an adult, anyone, and what that, God forbid, can lead to. Not only for what you do to them, but then the response, the defense sometimes goes on the offensive, and then you've already caused them to lose their and defend themselves and hurt someone else or hurt you back. But then you're really in violation of the evil, you put a stumbling block in front of them. Because what have you done? You go ahead and you've presented a situation that they're going to mess up on because you're testing them, you're taunting them, and their response is to attack. And whose fault is it? You started it. Your anger initially caused that to happen. You don't have any questions? I know we changed the format here a little. I don't want to take away some of what we had in the other format. So feel free if you have any questions, any statements, comments. Please feel free to share. Okay. Okay. The camera can only see me. Don't worry. It'll hear you maybe, but it won't see you. Okay. Take that into consideration. Okay. One of the interesting things that anger brings to a person, why is it? It says that it causes discipline of Gehenna. Now, for us, we don't know what really Gehenna is, right? Gehenna is a concept of a place where we're going to go to repair or to cleanse our soul from the sins that we accumulated in this world for a year's purpose, and after that, we're going to go to paradise, to Gan Eden, right? Very nice. But what does it really mean, the discipline of Gehenna? So, there are a few different ideas that we could try to, when I say to understand, to explain, for us to appreciate, basically. And that is one of the things that the Gehenna, the discipline of Gehenna, the dangers are, we'll call it, that when a person is angry, and a person is yelling or out of control against someone, it doesn't allow anyone else, whether it's a family member, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a child or a parent, doesn't make a difference who else, on the receiving end, or even not on the receiving end, but just watching, observing this person going through this anger, it does not allow that person, the angry person, to receive any constructive criticism. They're shutting themselves off, in a sense, from the ability to get better. Because a person is afraid to get near this lunatic. How am I going to approach them and say, you know what, maybe you should, I see you're angry about this, make a suggestion. Really? You're going to stay 10 feet away from this person. You're going to go walk the other way before you try to give some type of advice. Yeah. You're afraid for yourself. So what's happening? The midrash is lahachti b'nei adam. Says you're hurting others, yourself, and others for not being able to give you the constructive criticism or the ideas, the suggestions to perhaps avoid yourself being angry in the future. Everyone has issues. We all have issues. But if I tell a person, I vent my frustration to someone, even I frustrate my displeasure, I'm not angry. If I say something, and it could be something with force, but still I'm not angry, then a person understands, okay, I have an entranceway, I can still speak to this person, and I can do so. We know what it says in Pirkei, I think it's in Pirkei Avos. When someone is angry, what are you not supposed to do?
Make decisions.
Oh, that's for sure. No, you as the other person hearing you, when you see someone angry at you, let's say. Let's say a person starts yelling at you, you did this and that, they're yelling, what should you do?
Be quiet.
Be quiet. And then?
When they've calmed down.
Very good. When they're calmed down. When they're rational again. Because if they're not rational, whatever you're going to be saying is in one ear out the other. It's not going to help. So the only thing we could do is to Wait it out. And otherwise, if you don't wait it out, and then you try to give some advice, what do you think is going to happen? More! It'll be on top of you more. It's creating more lahachti b'nei adam. It's going to create more of a, causing a person, the Gehenna is going to increase. I always say in terms of the Gehenna, because we relate to Gehenna like a big fire. You know? The old concept, fire and brimstone type of thing, fire and a pitchfork and things like that. Lahavdil, right? The point is that all we do is the Shotim Gehenna. I always, use when I think of that, it raises the fire. You're just increasing the anger, making a person angry, you're making that Gehenna burn hotter. The flames are higher. That's all it's doing. By having such something like that. The Sefer HaRamban. HaRamban, it's interesting. It's a Sefer with a name. What is HaRamban? We associate, unfortunately, a lot of political terms with Jewish words and concepts. Unfortunately, the political usage of the words destroy the beauty and the really inner true meaning of these words. I'll give you an example, and I hope don't want you to take it the wrong way, either here or listening to this. We associate, if I tell you that the word aguda, the aguda today, for those who are not familiar, is a political, call it a political organization. The aguda has in the parliament in Israel, they have a group. Aguda is the Agudas Yisrael of America. It's call it black hat, black of better terms, black hat organization. It represents the yeshiva world and so on and so forth. Okay? People associate with that. What does Aguda really mean?
To glue together.
To bind.
To bind.
It means the idea to Agudas Yisrael means to bind the Jewish people together. All the Jewish people together. Unfortunately, we associate the word with some political action. Okay? Another term that I'm going to express right now is the word charedim. Now, what most people who don't know what it means really, they only hear the word because you see it in the news. The charedim this, the charedim that. Charedim don't want to go to the army in Israel. Right? You ever heard that term, charedim? Charedim, okay? He's a charedi. In Israel, you're charedi or you're chiloni. I'm saying these type of terminologies. But that's not, Haredi doesn't mean someone who is necessarily anti the government, okay? What is the true definition, meaning of Haredim?
Deep fear.
Tremble, fear.
Deep fear.
Because a Haredi is someone who takes the service of God seriously and is afraid and trembles before God. That's the real definition. That's not a political statement, which unfortunately, that's the way most people see it. So in the Sefer HaRamban, there's a book called Sefer HaRamban, a book of HaRamban, which discusses tshuva, repentance. Okay? Because a person who really fears God is what? Truly wants to be repentant. He writes something very powerful. We'll end off with this note. We are created, as I said earlier, B'Tselem Elokim, but we have a very delicate soul. It's very delicate. Our soul is like a piece of glass. Better yet, like a piece of crystal. Something expensive. And what anger does, when the anger gets into our kishkis, gets into our body, so to speak, it takes that beautiful crystal, beautiful glass, and it shatters it. That's what Kaas does. And if you ever think about, now, what does a person sometimes do when they get angry? What do they do sometimes?
I guess they break something.
They break things. They throw things, and they break it. That's what's happening, not only on the outside. When they do it on the outside, it's happening also on the inside. So that's when we have an obligation as the Ramban teaches his son, Shema b'ni Musa avicha, listen to the ways of the world. This is the way you have to educate yourself. Not easy. Challenges in life, the workplace, family, parnasa, every challenge across the board. Chaos may come along once in a while. I'm telling you now, stay away from it. And you'll lead a healthier, better life by doing so. Thank you very much. See you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.